Hello there, and welcome to Friday Formula, a new motorsport podcast hosted by myself, Owen Bellwood, and my colleague over here,
Will Longman.
Thank you so much for joining us this week. We're going to aim to take apart the week's motorsport news, and as it's pre-season, there's not a lot of news around at the moment, we're going to do predictions for the 2021 Formula One season. How does that?
It's essentially a conversation that we would have over text, but we've decided to bung microphones in front of us and see if anyone might actually be interested in what we have to say, or keep it on record so we can look back at the end of the season and see which one of us was right and which one of us was wrong.
Indeed. The texts were also getting a bit long, so I was contemplating voice memos, but I wasn't sure how that would go down.
No, I think that's a bit weird. Yet. No, I think that's quite an intimate thing, isn't it?
Sending voice memos. I've never sent one or been sent one, so I don't know at what level of friendship you have to have.
You just feel like you were missing out.
Yeah, I just wanted to be involved. So we're going to talk through the 10 teams that we've got on the grid, see how they performed last year, and with relatively stable rules, how we think they're going to fare over the coming proposed 23 races, but I think it'll end up being a little bit less than that. But either way, we're sure to get some pretty exciting racing over the coming months. Should we kick off with one Williams F1 team?
Yeah, so we're going to go in reverse championship order from 2020, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah.
Well, yeah, go for it then. Where have you got Williams finishing 2021?
So, I think Williams are going to have an interesting year. I am incredibly hopeful that we will see them scoring points again. I think first year under new ownership, sadly the first year without the Williams family at the helm. Hopefully they're going to be able to bring in some new sponsors, a little bit more investment, and see those results come in. So I have been incredibly optimistic and said that Williams will finish 9th.
I've done the same.
What was your reasoning for thinking that they'll be able to make up that spot?
They improved in 2020. George made Q2 twice. Not twice, he made Q2 numerous times. Nicholas wasn't quite there, but he was the only rookie on the grid last year?
Yes.
He was, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Which is a difficult position to be in.
He also showed some quite good race pace. There were a few times when he, was it Styria, when he finished 11th? So he did have some good Sundays. It's just polishing his Saturday, I think. And I think that'll come with a year of experience.
I think we normally see... I mean, look at George. I know he's in a slightly better car, but now he's mixing it in Q2 with the likes of Alfa and Haas, or beating them at least. If Nicholas can start putting his car there as well, then yeah. But when it comes to Sunday, George is Mr. Saturday. He didn't really prove himself as Mr. Sunday in the Williams last year. He was unlucky in the Merc. That's a completely different story. That'll give him some confidence, I think. But let's kind of ignore that. He had an amazing opportunity to score points in Imola. Under the safety car. He crashed under the safety car. It was almost like a dead cert that he was going to go in and get points. He was in 10th or 9th.
I think it was 9th, yeah.
And I wonder if the pressure slightly got to him. Whereas now, I think he's probably got his head screwed on a little bit more. He's had some time with Mercedes. He's going to feel like a real contender in that car.
And he's got those points. He's not there with that potential record for the most races without points hanging around his neck. So he's sort of that. I imagine that'll lift a little bit of the pressure, and hopefully him and Latifi will be able to work together as a really good team to try and push Williams forward this year to the high place of 9th.
This is the thing though. When we say Williams are going to score points, do you think more than one car is going to score points all season?
No, I think it'll be the case that there'll be these crazy races where Williams end up playing in the points. And it's just making sure that either driver can capitalise on that. Because the regulations are relatively similar to last year. It's been 6 months or so since they got the new owner. So there's not going to have been a super amount of investment in their research and development and being able to improve the car where it needs improving. So I think it is probably still going to be a struggle for the team. But hopefully, with Nicholas having an extra year of experience, George having that bit of confidence from the Mercedes, they maybe won't choke at these opportunities that we maybe saw them struggle at last year. And I think that's more what it's going to be. It's the case with all of these lower down teams. It's just capitalising on the mistakes of others and being able to grab those points to work their way up to 8th, 9th, rather than 10th.
But then also, they might finish with no points and still finish 9th. I can see them finishing in the bottom 10 all season and being above the team we've both put in 10th, because I think we both know who we put in 10th, on our right positions throughout the season. I think their average position will be higher than this team. Should we move on?
I agree with that. I think it'll come down to the performance of the bottom teams, and just it's like how we've got quite a tight midfield. I think the 3 teams that are going to be nearer the bottom are going to be kind of tight, and it's just a case of seeing how people do. So with that in mind, last year's 9th place finishers were Haas F1 team. Where have you put them for 2021?
I have put them in 10th.
I have put them in 10th as well. Imagine that.
Go on then, why have you put them in 10th?
I just think it's been a tough couple of years for Haas. When they first came on the scene, it was quite exciting to see this new American team that had come in with a new way of approaching Formula One, and it was when there was still quite a bit of excitement around people like Romain Grosjean. So seeing him jump in this new team, it was a pretty cool thing to see. And then they just kind of stumbled a little bit, and then 2019 was tough with like sponsorship and consistencies on the team, and then 2020 was just even worse, where they just didn't seem to have a hold of the car. And I can't see that improving over the winter break, and then also to have 2 rookies that aren't particularly going to know what a good F1 car should feel like. So whereas someone like Grosjean might be able to say, this doesn't feel right, this is how it should feel, they're just going to be like, this doesn't feel right. So I don't know how much development they'll be able to do through the year because of that.
You've hit the nail on the head. Like, I think that's exactly what I've got. You know, Mick Schumacher is a Schumacher. Like, he knows how to drive an F1 car, but not to the extent that Romain Grosjean, who has been in the sport for a decade, and Kevin Magnussen, who hasn't been in the sport for that long, but has had podiums, has driven for teams like McLaren, Renault, and can give feedback. And it seemed like last year they got to the point where they were so frustrated with the car. I can't imagine what it was like in briefings. I think you kind of saw someone Drive to Survive, what it was like.
Drive to Survive was 2019, when they still had a slightly more successful year. So to have gone through, 2019 they had 28 points, and then 2020 they had only 3.
Yeah.
So that's a big difference in results. Obviously it's the same position, 9th both years, but to not.
But how much of that do you put down to the Ferrari power unit being a bit diminished?
Yeah, that's obviously an issue that hopefully might have been resolved a little bit.
But I still don't think it will push them. Well, I think they'll still be going down. I think, they're not going to be able to feed back. And I think it was telling that last season, when it all came out that Grosjean and Magnussen weren't staying, and they were not afraid of kind of saying, this car is slow.
Yeah. Like,
there is nothing more they can do. And I don't think Mick and Nikita will be able to do that. I also think, from what I've seen of Nikita Mazepin in F2,
it's going to be a handful.
Yeah, he's a volatile driver. He makes snap, risky decisions that don't often pay. It's high risk, high reward.
He had some. There were some pretty shaky moves in F2 last year when we saw it with. I remember seeing Grosjean at Silverstone last year. He had some kind of moving twice under braking,
Yeah.
but that was nothing compared to what we saw Nikita doing in F2. He was pretty much turning in on people by the looks of it.
Yeah.
Which you just
And
can't.
even well, he was in a great position in Spa, to win the race. Yeah, he did, didn't he? He did he cross the line in first in Spa, but he was given a 5-second penalty, so Tsunoda came in first and he came in, and that's why he knocked the podium board over, because he crossed the line first, but Yuki got the win.
Yeah, I seem to remember that. He drove into the podium, the marker, as if to say, it's not my problem.
And let's be honest, it's going to be great entertainment. Like, it kind of will be worth tuning in for, but it's risky, and
I also don't know if it's what you want in F1 either. Obviously, everyone's excited to see exciting racing, but there's a difference between exciting racing and crashing into people. Like, look at the reputation Danny Kvyat had, and that was from crashed into Seb once in China, and it stuck with him through his whole career. So I don't know if it's what fans want, really.
should we move on?
So, at 8th place last year was Alfa Romeo. Oh, don't know why I said it so weird. Alfa Romeo.
And where have you got them next year?
I've got them 8th again.
Me too. Oh, I couldn't have planned this.
I know. We're so in sync. So they had an alright year last year. Like, to say they were hampered by the Ferrari power unit as well, and I don't know, I always wanted them to do better. I feel like last year I just always wanted a bit more out of the Alfa. It was the best looking car on the grid. It had Kimi Raikkonen, obviously world champion, and has his moments of absolute brilliance. Like, I can't remember which race it was last year, but he got up from way by the back up into the points in the opening lap, which was amazing to see. So there were moments of just pure Alfa Romeo joy, but I think it also lacked from the Ferrari power and just needing that little bit more oomph, which hopefully we'll have this year. They're one of the first teams to unveil their car, so hopefully that shows they've got a lot of confidence in it and they're ready to take on the 2021 season and score a few more points, but maybe not more enough to overtake the next team.
Yeah, I think Antonio also had a couple of storming laps, opening laps last year. Did you see the F1 posted a video a couple of days ago of kind of his opening laps in 2021, and he made up a lot of places. But I don't know why Antonio Giovinazzi is still in that seat.
It's the most underwhelming driver lineup on the grid this year.
Sorry?
I think it's the most underwhelming driver lineup on the grid this year. I would have
Yeah,
liked
and it's got Kimi Raikkonen in it. That's saying something, right?
I'd like to see new people.
Yeah, I think everyone would have liked to see Callum Ilott in that seat after the year he had in F2. But for me, the kicker, and I've said this to you before, Owen, the kicker was when Carlos Sainz was announced for the Ferrari seat, and Antonio Giovinazzi came out and said that he didn't feel he was ready for the Ferrari seat. And I thought, you're in the Ferrari Junior seat, the only one on the grid. This is why you're here. There's no other reason why you're in an Alfa Romeo seat other than to get you ready for the Ferrari seat. And you've had 2 years, if not a look, 2 years and a few races in a couple of previous seasons. And you're 20. He's 27 now, isn't he? 26, 27. When are you going to be ready? Like,
yeah, Yeah, that was the thing I found strange, and it was a similar story with Renault, how this Ferrari and Renault have these huge young driver programs, but they didn't have people that they wanted to pick from and bring up to their senior teams. So obviously it's great that Carlos is going to Ferrari, but it defeats the whole purpose of the program if you've got someone in that junior Formula One seat at Alfa Romeo. Why aren't they then being brought up to join Charles?
I guess what we've spoken about isn't really anything to do with how they're going to do next year. It's just us complaining about the Ferrari junior seat.
So Alfa Romeo finished 8th in 2020, and in 7th was AlphaTauri, ex-Toro Rosso team, rebranded for 2020 with a swanky new livery, and it was a good year for them. Like,
It was. I think Kvyat had similar to what Perez had at Racing Point, where when he didn't have his seat, he actually started performing relatively okay and had some good races.
yeah, it was kind of like he needed to prove himself at the start of the year, didn't manage to, but then must have felt more comfortable and just able to do whatever he wanted, and went off and got his good results.
Yeah. Whereas I feel Pierre Gasly, obviously, he had the win at Monza, and he had some other great races. But I think he was an easy pick for driver of the season for a lot of people, and I don't think he was the number one driver. Like, regardless of what car he was driving, I think his performances were good, but I don't think they were.
I think it was because
incredible.
He had a few like really standout moments, and they were the things people remembered from those crazy races. It was like, Pierre Gasly, he was able to capitalise on all these other little mistakes that there were. So it'll be exciting to see how he grows into the role of a team leader, because I don't think last year or the year before there was that number one driver, team leader figure at the team. And the only experience he's had with it has been with Max Verstappen as the team leader at Red Bull when he was there. So I don't know how that's going to go and what the dynamic's going to be like between him and Yuki Tsunoda, who's obviously coming in for his first year and kind of needs to have that person to look up to.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Yuki's an interesting one because he feels like he's just completely come out of nowhere. Like, he was in F3 in 2019.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's rapid. It is rapid. But it just goes to show the talent he has, like, speaks for itself.
It's interesting that team principal Franz Tost has said that he's expecting some crashes from Yuki this year. So it'll be interesting to see how having those extra DNFs that he's predicting will affect their position in the championship. But I'm also just excited to see Yuki up and fighting in that really tight midfield, because the Alpha is in a position to be going up against the Alpines, the Astons, and the McLarens, dicing for those sort of a podium if something crazy happens, but also just these higher points positions.
And I think that goes to prove what you just said about Franz Tost, the real difference between Red Bull and Christian Horner and Tauri or the junior team and Franz Tost over the last few years, because when Gasly went back to Toro Rosso in 2019, he loved it. And he hated it in Red Bull. And when he was in Red Bull, he had a crash in testing and it was the end of the world. And again, like, Christian Horner comes out and Drive to Survive and it's like, he broke a rear wing and that cost us 300 grand, blah, blah, blah. Whereas if you come into a new team, I know there's a difference between going into Red Bull and going into AlphaTauri, but coming into F1 and being told, we don't mind if you crash the car, like, you're expected to do that. The pressure is off. It's completely off.
Yeah, and
you're going to enjoy it more.
I think that's going to be the real difference between Yuki Tsunoda and then people like Mick Schumacher and Nikita Mazepin. AlphaTauri, it's not going to be the end of the world for the owners if they do have these crashes, because it's effectively a junior team, whereas Haas is there as the Haas F1 team to be promoting Haas automation, and if they're having crashes and not being it hitting their limited budget a lot more, they're obviously going to not feel as relaxed and feel more stressed about the situation, and maybe not be able to perform in the same way that they would if they had this freedom to make mistakes.
So you mentioned they're in with Alpine, Aston. Where did we haven't actually said where we're going to put them?
No, because I really struggled with the next one. Because the next in 2020 was Ferrari.
No, we've not said where we're going to put AlphaTauri.
Oh,
is that because we both put them 7th again?
I put them 7th.
Yeah, I put them 7th too.
Yeah, so I think they'll come 7th again. I don't know. Hopefully some exciting.
I'll tell you what, this is episode 1 and we are full of the hot, spicy takes.
Hey, you wait. None of mine are spicy.
Well, okay, so Ferrari is next. I'm expecting this to be somewhere, at least a too chilly.
I really struggled.
Heat.
It was so Ferrari finished 6th last year. It was a shocking year for them. They got 131 points, so they were only marginally ahead of AlphaTauri. And then there was a big gap from them to Renault because they just had an absolute dog of a car. And they effectively only had one driver as well, because Seb was struggling to get the car under control for the whole year. So I think that it was a toss-up. I've eventually gone for the safe option. And I've said that they'll come 6th again this year.
Ooh,
but it was either 6th or 3rd. I was like, they're going to go one or the other. And I think my heart says 6th.
Well, I've gone for neither. And I've said they're going to win the... No, not really. I've said they're going to go 4th. I've gone 4th.
Okay. Yeah,
and
it was tough picking between the next 4 teams.
It does. I think this might be where we actually finally have some variation. Yeah, so Ferrari, it was a dog of a car is the perfect way to put it. But it didn't seem like it at the beginning of the season when Charles was pulling out podiums. He was on the podium in Austria. He was in the podium in Silverstone, or was that Silverstone with Lewis, and he would have been on the podium in Turkey had he not pushed it a bit too hard on the last lap. And then Seb got there anyway. That was Seb's experience coming out. That's a little bit different because of the circuit. It was a wet race. Seb couldn't get a handle of that car at all.
No, and I think if there was all these rumours going around that they had different cars, but I think it was just more suited to Charles's driving. So if it's like an age thing and these younger drivers that are coming through have a slightly different style, and maybe that's why there's been issues with Max's style at Red Bull. But it'll be interesting to see if Carlos can adapt to this style and get on top of the car quicker, and then I think that's what could help them through, because having the extra driver there to pick up the points is what they need to find their way back up through the championship.
I wonder if it was Seb's been in F1 since 2008, right? 7 or 8. So this is not his first rodeo, it's his 13th year. And it was a rubbish car, and it was a car that wasn't behaving like he should have. And so he's going to be sat there going, I don't know why this isn't turning the way it should. I don't know why this is so slow. I don't know how to get the speed out of this. It was Charles's 3rd F1 car. So maybe he was a little bit more adaptable to what he needed to do to keep it on where it needed to be. Whereas Seb was just a bit more like...
style.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Whereas Charles doesn't... He has his style, but he just knew what he needed to do to get that car in the right place at the right time, whereas Seb couldn't yeah, like you say, his style to flow through the car. I don't think they're going to have the same problems as they did last year. I think they're going to pull it back with the power unit, because if they don't, it will be a disaster. It will be a complete disaster if they don't.
Yeah, because imagine the engine freeze at the end of the year, trying to develop the power unit this year ahead of the freeze, and also developing next year's car with the whole new regulations. It's just going to be a write-off for the team until like 2025 when the new engine
Yeah,
rules come in, which they just can't have.
no, and it's tricky to. Well, it's not. The car was terrible. Not just it wasn't just a power unit problem. It was a car problem as well. But it's the last year of the regulations, so they can just catch up with everyone else.
Mm. Yeah,
Um,
they had their team launch on Friday, whatever a team launch is, and afterwards, Matteo Binotto has said that they've clawed back a bit of the performance and they've got rid of a bit of the drag. So hopefully it will be a little bit closer to some of the other teams. And there were moments last year when both Seb and Charles pulled out some great moves and were having some tidy racing. It's just if
but
that can be done.
there was also racing against each other. Styria, where Charles went bounding down and crashed into Seb. That was a disaster, which was very similar. Well, they crashed into each other in Brazil in 2019. They had that crash, and then it was in Sakia, I think after the second start, where Seb blamed Charles for cutting across him and kind of ruining his race, and he lost loads of positions. So what's going to be interesting is seeing the dynamic between Charles and Carlos, which I discovered, or at least realised the other day, relate Carlos in English is Charles, and it made
Yeah,
me very happy to learn that. I'm over the moon.
yeah, it's the same name in two different languages.
Ah,
Um,
it's great. Do you reckon Nikita is Michael in Russian?
no.
Okay.
Um, yeah, so I was thinking about this too, how the team has definitely invested in Charles for the future. He is going to form the basis of Ferrari's evolution and growth over the coming years. And they may not say that one of them's a number one and one of them's a number two, but how long are they going to be able to race against each other? There's going to come a point when one of them's ahead in points. That someone's going to be on the blower saying, "Don't race, let them win, or let them hold the position." And I don't know how either of them is going to take that, because Carlos was the leader at McLaren. He's not going to want to go from being a team leader at the third place finishing team in 2020 to being a number two driver at the sixth place finishing team. I think it's going to be a challenge.